Hujjatul Islam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala wa radi'an, and we arrived at the adab ihdar al-ta'am, so the etiquettes and the mannerisms and the decorum that relate to presenting food to guests when you have invited guests to eat at your house. He says, al-awwalu, meaning the first of the etiquettes that he's going to discuss, ta'jil al-ta'am. فذلك من إكرام الضيف وقد قال عليه الصلاة والسلام من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. So the first etiquette to be considered and to be followed when I have invited a person to my house to eat is that I feed them quickly. So I don't leave them so that they become more hungry. I feed them when they arrive. I have the food ready upon arrival. And he mentions that this is a way of honoring one's guest. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whomever believes in Allah and the last day, then let him honor his guest. And then he says, وَمَهْمَا حَضَرَ الْأَكْثَرُونَ وَغَابَ وَاحِدٌ أَوْ اثْنَانٌ وَتَأَخَّرُوا عَنِ الْوَقْتِ الْمَوْعُودِ فَحَقُّ الْحَاضِرِينَ فِي التَّعْجِيلِ أَوْلَى مِنْ حَقِّ أُولَٰئِكَ فِي التَّأْخِيرِ. And this is a very important point. He says, if there are a group of guests that are from those whom you have invited, if they are delayed, if they come late, then those who have attended, if they are more in number, they have more of a right to eat rather than waiting for the late guests. And it's very important for us as guests. For example, I've been invited to a person's house and I arrive late. I should not be expectant of them to wait for me before they start eating. No. If I want to eat with them, then I should be on time. And if I am late, then I expect that they start before I come. Why? Because perhaps some guests, they need to leave early. Perhaps some have affairs that they have to attend to. Perhaps some cannot stay as late as I can, and so on and so forth. And so, if I am the host, if a person is coming late, I don't wait for that person. He says, الثاني ترتيب الأطعمة. The second consideration when presenting the food is the order of the food that we present, i.e. which foods do we bring out before other foods, etc. He says بتقديم الفاكهة أولا إن كانت, and a person should start with fruit if they are going to present fruit to their guests. So the custom here in the West is to present fruit after food, but in many cultures, Arab culture is still the same. I'm not sure about other Muslim cultures, but in Arab culture it's still that way. And so the fruit should be at the bottom of the digestive system, underneath the food that's going to be consumed. So the fruit first, and then the food that is consumed after will follow and will be on the top. He says, وَفِي الْقُرْآنِ تَنْبِيهٌ عَلَى تَقْدِيمِ الْفَاكِهَةِ في قوله تعالى وفاكهة مما يتخيرون. And Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, he says, in the Quran we actually have evidence that a person should put forth fruit before they present savory food, or that a person should eat fruit before savory food. And when you break your fast, what is the sunnah? To start with a date, which is a fruit. And so he says in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِمَّا يَتَخَيَّرُونَ ثُمَّ قَالَ وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ. That the people of Jannah, they will have fruit from that which they want, and the meat of birds from that which they desire. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned fruit before meat. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says this is evidence that a person should eat fruit before they eat meat. Likewise, when you have guests, give them fruit before you give them savory foods. He says, ثُمَّ أَفْضَلُ مَا يُقَدَّمْ بَعْدَ الْفَاكِهَةِ اللَّحَمُ وَالثَّرِيدِ. He says, and the best thing that can be given after fruit is lahm, meat, and tharid. And tharid can be translated as porridge or broth, depending on what is being used. So whether it's meat-based, whether it's oat-based, whether it's vegetable-based, etc. فَإِن جَمَعَ إِلَيْهِ حَلَاوَ بَعْدَهُ فَقَدْ جَمَعَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. And if he then presents them with something sweet after having the fruit and the meat, then he has brought together all of the good things. He says, وَتُتِمْ هَذِهِ الطَّيِّبَاتِ بِشُرْبِ الْمَاءِ الْبَارِدِ. And he should complete the package for his guests by giving them cold water to drink. And of course, this book was authored nearly 1,000 years ago. And so cold water during that time was not something that they had readily available to them like we do today. Today, especially in cold climates, we turn the tap on and the water comes out. or we go to the shop, we purchase the water, put it in the fridge, a few hours later it's cold. But 1,000 years ago, they would have to cool the water down, whether it's with clay pots under the ground, whether it's with ice, whatever it might have been. And so it's actually something that we take for granted. And so of course we can, bi'idhnillah, we can up the ikram slightly in our time today by presenting fruit juices and drinks that our guests would like, etc. He says, وَصَبُّ الْمَاءِ الْفَاتِرَ عَلَى الْيَدِ عِنْدَ الْغَسْلِ, and a person should pour tepid water for their guests so that their guests can wash their hands after they have eaten. Again, today we have faucets, we have taps, and so a person can go and use the bathroom, go and use the washroom area and wash their hands, etc. So there is no need for the host to pour water over the hands of his or her guests. It's contextual. He's not suggesting that it's sunnah to do so. It's contextual. And within some cultures, they still do this. So they'll come around with a big bowl and they'll pour water for their guests. Although it's probably better to go and use the bathroom. He says, الثالث أن يقدم من الألوان ألطفها. And the third etiquette of presenting food is that a person presents the lightest and finest of the variations of food that they are going to give to their guests first, before the heavy foods. He says, حتى يستوفي منها ما يريد ولا يكثر الأكل بعده. He says, so that this person can eat of the variety or the lighter foods, the more finer foods, as much as they like. And they don't eat too much. How? He says, وعادة المترفين تقديم الغليظ ليستأنف حركة الشهوة بمصادفة اللطيف بعده. He says, the extravagant amongst us, normally they present the heavy foods first and then they bring out the fineries afterwards. Why? So that the fine foods, when a person sees them, the desire is reinvigorated. And so they begin to eat again. They begin to eat again. Why? Because they don't want to miss out on the fine foods. He's saying, no, present the fine foods first and then present the heavy foods. And he says, وَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا لَوْنٌ وَاحِدٌ ذَكَرَهُ لِيَسْتَوْفُوا بِهِ. If he does not have except but one variety of food, then he should mention this to his guests. Why? Because some of his guests may be anticipating something else. So if, for example, you have guests and the only thing you're going to present for them is lentil soup. In some cultures, lentil soup is given as a starter. So your guests might be assuming, khalas, there's meat to come, there's rice to come, there's pasta, there's something else. If it's only lentil soup, let them know. Why? So they can fill their stomachs and they can be satisfied. He says, وَلَا يَنْتَظِرُ أَطْيَبُ مِنْهُ. So as we mentioned, he says, الرابع أَلَّا يُبَادِرَ إِلَى رَفْعِ الْأَلْوَانِ قَبْلَ تَمَكُّنِهِمْ مِنَ الْإِسْتِيفَاءِ. That the person does not, the host should not raise the food from the table prior to the guests having eaten their fill. If you see that your guests are still eating and still enjoying the food, then it's considered to be un-Islamic, according to Imam Ghazali rahimahullah, and we would say bad manners in our context, for you to go and to raise the food. Sometimes you might go to a restaurant and they want to close. You're still eating, the waiter comes over, takes a plate, indication, comes over, have you finished? I'm still eating. Yeah, I'm not finished yet. Why? Because they want to let you know that they want to close up. That's not how we should treat our guests. If your guest is still eating, let them enjoy their food. He says, حَتَّى يَرْفَعُ الْأَيْدِ عَنْهَا. So if you were to take the food away whilst they're still eating, then they would remove their hands. Why? Because they're shy. They're shy. They're not going to say, oh, I'm still eating that. Put it back down. Most people anyway, unless it's a very close friend. He says, فَلَعَلَّ مِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَكُونَ بَقِيَّةُ ذَلِكَ اللَّوْنِ أَشْهَى عِنْدَهُ مِمَّا اسْتَحْضَرُوا. And so perhaps there might be someone there that prefers the food that's on the table than that which the others are anticipating or have requested. And so if you see someone still eating, leave the food on the table, even if it's a starter. He says, الخامس أن يقدم من الطعام قدر الكفاية. That a person gives of the food that they are presenting that which is sufficient for their guests. فإن التقليل عن الكفاية نقص في المروءة. Because if you give less than that which is going to fill your guests, then it is a deficiency of your maru'ah. And maru'ah is, perhaps you can say, it's dignity or honor. So perhaps it's your standing, your societal standing. If you have guests and you don't feed them properly, previously it would be considered a deficiency of your societal standing. And it would be considered an aib for a person to leave your house and they haven't eaten properly. Today, is that the case? Allah knows best. Some people, if you get a biscuit, you're blessed. He says, وَالزِّيَادَةُ عَلَيْهِ تَصَنَّعُ وَمُرَاءَاتٌ. He says, تَصَنُّعٌ وَمُرَاءَاتٌ. He says, and if you give extra food, so you give more than that which is sufficient, then this is tasannu'un. And tasannu' is basically where a person is posturing. Posturing to try to look good. And a lot of our hosting today falls into this, unfortunately. Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, what did he say previously? For those that were in attendance, he said, when you bring guests to your house, feed them from that which you feed your family. Do not be extravagant. Do not go over the top. Do not posture. Why? Because you make it difficult to host people in the future, and you make it difficult for people to host others in the future. Because now you've set some sort of standard. You've set a standard, and people won't feel comfortable. And that's not how it should be. And in fact, you find maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago perhaps, this was the case. People would eat at each other's houses without all of the, the posturing that goes on today. Today, when someone comes to eat, there's a set of cutlery, plates, and only for guests. Types of foods that are only for guests. But what happens? Casual visiting of one another doesn't take place. Because we feel now I have to provide something. There's a standard. It costs extra money, etc. And not everyone can afford it. And this is in opposition to joining between ourselves in brotherhood and in sisterhood and building a strong community, etc. He says, وَلَا سِيَّمَا إِذَا كَانَتْ نَفْسُهُ لَا تَسْمَحْ بِأَنْ يَأْكُلُ الْكُلِّ. He says, a person should definitely not give extra if he's not going to allow them to eat all of it, which alhamdulillah, I've never seen, but perhaps some people they do. He says, وَيَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَعْزِلَ أَوَّلًا نَصِيبَ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ. And this is important. When presenting food or giving food to our guests, it's important to put portions aside for our families. Why? And look at the consideration that Imam al-Ghazali is giving to the family. He says, حَتَّى لَا تَكُونْ أَعْيُنُهُمْ طَامِحَةً إِلَى رُجُوعِ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ. So that you don't have the eyes of your families looking and anticipating anything that has come back from the table so that they can eat from it. Especially children. Especially children. Children can't help it. Young children, if there's food that they like, some might be even bold and go and say, I want some of that or something like that. So it's important, put their portion aside before the guests come. He says, فلعله لا يرجع فتضيق صدورهم وتنطلق في الضيفان ألسنتهم. He says, if you do not put a portion aside, then what can happen is their hearts or their chests can become constricted, and they start to have ill feelings for the guests, and they might start to talk about the guests afterwards. So you have become a means of ghiba taking place in your household. Why? By not understanding human nature. So here Imam al-Ghazali, he's mentioning a very important point. It's a deep point to consider. Why? Because a person may say, no, my family should learn and have manners. Imam al-Ghazali is speaking here about human nature. Human nature is that if a person sees something they like, they hope to have some of it. And if they don't receive it, they might talk about the person. Oh, look, they ate everything. They didn't save anything for us. Khalas, ghiba. So prevent the problem before the problem arises by preempting it. Put something aside. And this is an approach that we should take in all areas of life. In all areas of life. It's called al-mudara. To basically to anticipate and to run and to take charge of a situation by preempting the problems and avoiding those problems before they arise. By taking the necessary means and so on and so forth. Being present and aware. Then he says, آداب الانصراف, the etiquette of leaving. When the guests are leaving, how should the host be and how should the leaving experience be? He says, الأول أن يخرج مع الضيف إلى باب الدار وهو سنة وذلك من إكرام الضيف. He says the first is that the host should leave to the door of his home with the guest. If the guest is leaving, a person should take them to the door. And so, for example, if a person is living in a block, take them downstairs. If a person has a car outside, take them to their car, and so on and so forth. Because he's talking more perhaps about the old types of living conditions. So, to the best of your ability, facilitate for your guest. If you have the capacity to, your guest hasn't got a car, and you have a car and you have the time, take them home. It's all ikram, and it's something you're rewarded for. He says, وَذَلِكَ مِنْ إِكْرَامِ الضَّيْفِ, and that is honoring your guests. وَتَمَامُ الْإِكْرَامِ طَلَاقَةُ الْوَجْهِ وَطِيبُ الْحَدِيثِ عِنْدَ الدُّخُولِ وَالْخُرُوجِ عَلَى الْمَائِدَةِ. He says, and from the completion of honoring your guest is that you have what is referred to in Arabic as طَلَاقَةُ الْوَجْهِ, a welcoming face. A welcoming face. And of course, it does not mean that you go overboard. A welcoming face does not mean that you have to smile all the time, because that's not normal. Your guest doesn't want to be greeted by a psychotic host. They want to be greeted by a friendly host. And so, just being friendly, and friendliness starts in the heart. If you have an open heart, your face will open up. If you have an open heart, your face will naturally be open. If you have a closed heart, your face will close up. You don't need to smile to have a welcoming face. And you will see this. You will see this. You can see it in a person. When a person is in a bad mood, you can see it on their face. But where is the bad mood coming from? The bad mood is not in the face. It's inside. It's internal, in the heart. But you see it on the face. And so having an open heart and having, he says, طيب الحديث, good speech, talking about good things, making the guest feel welcome, asking about the guest, making the guest feel cared for and concerned for. Don't welcome your guest to your house and then start telling your guest about all of your problems. You're hosting your friends and you're complaining to your friends about your wife and your children and your finances and life. No, make them feel happy, send them home and they've had a good experience. This is from Ikram al-Dayf. Of course, if you have a good friend that you've invited and you have something you want to talk about, talk. That's what friends are for. But bearing in mind that you want to honor your guest and you want to treat him in the best way possible. Likewise for the sisters, you don't host a sister and you start complaining, etc. And this of course would be mukhalafatul adab al-Islami. To complain about your spouse to someone else, it goes against the etiquette of Islam. The only time you should complain is if you are seeking advice. If you are seeking advice. If you are seeking advice about a matter, then you can describe it. You can talk to the person about the matter. But if you're just talking about the issue and you're not seeking advice, or the person has no capacity to offer you a solution, you're complaining. And you fall into complaining to the creation about the creator. Because you're complaining about the circumstance given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is complaining about the creator. Allah is the one that gave you the circumstance. So rather than complain to someone who has no ability to help you, turn to Allah and complain to Allah firstly and foremostly, and then seek out the advice from someone who has the capacity to help you. He says, الثاني أن ينصرف الضيف طيب النفس وإن جرى في حقه تقصير فذلك من حسن الخلق والتواضع. And so this is for the guest. The guest should leave the house, leave the home, leave the place that he has been invited to. He says, طيب النفس, in a goodly state, with a clean heart, not restricted, not holding any grudges or ill feelings for the host or anyone else. Even if some sort of deficiency took place, even if he wasn't treated well by the guest, even if he didn't feel that the host gave him what he deserved of time, etc., he should not take that with him. He should make excuses. And he says this is from good character. What is it that's from good character? What specifically here is from good character? It's a real question.
Looking over the mistake.
Huh?
Looking over the mistake.
Exactly. Anyone know what it's called in Arabic? Overlooking the mistake? Huh? Al-afu, that's after you've known the mistake. So al-afu is to forgive, to overlook it. There's something that you should have prior to even recognizing the mistake. It's more in the moment. At-taghaful. At-taghaful. Anyone know what at-taghaful is? What?
You don't know.
Huh?
Something you don't know. Awful means that you don't care something.
No.
You overlook it. You
Exactly. So it's basically forcibly overlooking, pretending that you don't notice. At-taghaful. So, for example, I go home and my child does something that they shouldn't do. I pretend that I didn't see it. Taghaful. I saw it, but I pretend that I didn't see it. I go outside and someone that I love and respect is smoking a cigarette. I turn away and I walk the other way and I pretend I didn't even see it. And someone might say, but don't you give them nasiha? Yeah, in a few days, I can give a nasiha in a general way and they'll know that I'm talking about them. But I don't come out and throw punches, for example, metaphorically speaking. At-taghaful. And one of the key components to a successful marriage, at-taghaful. The ability to pretend that you did not notice something. At-taghaful. Many marriages break down because of a lack of taghaful. An example, the husband leaves the toothpaste on the side with the lid off every single morning. And the wife gets annoyed. And she continues to get annoyed. And she continues to pick up on it. And it turns into a big argument over what? Toothpaste. Someone didn't say please. Oh, you've disrespected me. How can you disrespect me? Oh, you're sensitive. Oh, what do you mean I'm sensitive? You're dismissing my feelings. It turns into a big argument. And you go back to what was the issue? Many times you ask a husband or a wife, why did you argue in the first place? They can't remember. And if you ask them, was it worth it? They'll say it wasn't worth it. I should have just overlooked it. At-taghaful. It's very important. So you you try to have this quality with you at all times. Someone mistreats you, at-taghaful. And who is it that benefits from at-taghaful? It's the person. The person. Why? Because you have a lighter heart. You have a lighter heart. You're not hurt by people all the time. He says, الثالث ألا يخرج إلا برضا صاحب المنزل وإذنه ويراعي قلبه في قدر الإقامة. So he says that a person should not leave the host's home or place of invitation except by asking the host. And of course, if a person asks permission, the host should not say, no, I want you to stay. No, it's then from a place of husn al-khuluq. And this is the approach that a person should take with the host of a home to which they've been invited, with their teacher, with their parent, with anyone with respect and authority over them. And in that place, the host has the place of respect and authority, even if it's a metaphorical authority. Who is it that is supposed to lead the salah in a person's home? Sahibud dar, the owner of that home. And so you should treat him like you would treat the sheikh in his majlis. And so you should say, I take your permission to leave. And of course the host should say, of course, go ahead. But if you've arrived, you had a cup of coffee, you haven't eaten anything, and the host says, no, I've cooked, please stay. Stay, eat something, unless it's an emergency. As we mentioned earlier, it's recommended that a person who's fasting breaks their fast if they've been invited to eat at someone's home, if they know that breaking the fast is going to please the host, if it's a sunnah fast. So staying for an hour or so to eat and to enjoy a person's company, of course it's ibadah, and these are all acts of ibadah if you do them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and the guest should also take into consideration the state of the host, i.e. I shouldn't overstay my welcome. It's 10 o'clock in the evening. I know my host is working tomorrow. I should leave at a time which is appropriate and a time which is adequate. He says, وَإِذَا نَزَلَ ضَيْفًا فَلَا يَزِيدُ عَلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ. If a guest stays in a person's home, he should not stay for longer than 3 days. And of course, we don't really have this practice here in the West. Perhaps in some Muslim countries they do, but generally now with the prevalence of hotels and so on and so forth, and also the restriction of the homes that we live in, it's not practical to have a person who is foreign to your female family members stay in your home sometimes and things like this. He says, قال النبي عليه السلام فراش للرجل وفراش للمرأة وفراش للضيف والرابع للشيطان ويستحب أن يكون عنده فراش للضيف النازل. So Imam al-Ghazali, he says it's recommended that a person has a spare bed in his home Why? Just in case a guest comes. Previously, a person would have a guest room, have a guest mattress, etc. He says that a person should have a mattress for himself, a mattress for the woman, and a mattress for the guest. And the fourth is for shaitan. Then he says آداب متفرقة. الأول إن الأكل في السوق تواضع وترك تكلف من بعض الناس فهو حسن وخرق مروءة من بعضهم فهو مكروه. This is a very important issue to consider, and it's a mas'ala which you find often being discussed, and it is the issue of cultural practice, norms of a society. And there is a qaida, a principle that the fuqaha they often discuss. They say al-aadat muhakkama, al-aadat muhakkama, that the norms of a society are legislative within the sharia, meaning legislation can be drawn from a societal practice with conditions. One of the main conditions, that it does not contradict an Islamic principle, an established Islamic principle. Number two, that it is an aada which is coming from the righteous, not an aada which is coming from the wicked and the evil. And there are others. But here he says that eating in a marketplace it's a humble act, it's a sign of humility, and it's also an act of leaving off posturing, social posturing. When it comes from some people, he says, in this case, it's a good thing. For others, he says, it is going against the maru'ah. So it is a deficiency in one's social standing. And so for that person, it's makruh. He says, وَهُوَ مُخْتَلِفْ بِعَادَاتِ الْبِلَادِ. And this issue depends upon the norms of the societies and the communities and the regions and lands. For example, in the UK, if you saw a sheikh eating outside in public, would you consider it to be something which is problematic? Would you look at the person and say, wow, what's the sheikh doing? Maybe because you have a traditional background. But if you go to, for example, many Arab lands, for example, in the subcontinent, whether it's Pakistan or Bangladesh, Arab lands such as from Morocco to Egypt, the Middle East, it will be considered strange in many of those countries for a sheikh to eat outside in public. Why? Because of the norms are different. The norms are different. Can you imagine, for example, seeing a president of an Arab land traveling by bus? What do you think? When you were in Egypt, did you see Sisi on a bus? But here, is it something you might consider? You don't think so?
Yeah.
Prime Minister?
Yeah, Prime Minister. Boris was on his
Boris was on his bike. Would you imagine in Egypt seeing Sisi on a bike? Huh? Or in Saudi Arabia seeing the king riding a bike? But here, people don't really turn their heads. They might say, oh, look, it's the Prime Minister, but that's it. But the adat, different adat. So these issues, they are related to the norms of a society. And so it's very important that we distinguish between the norms of different societies when we discuss these issues. A student of knowledge here cannot go outside and see another student of knowledge, a hafiz of the Quran, and say, oh, this brother's eating outside. This is incorrect. The scholars of hadith, they used to say that if a scholar was seen in public without covering the head, then this person would be considered someone who you should not take hadith from. Can you apply that here? No. Different adat. Different adat. He says, وأحوال الأشخاص فمن لا يليق ذلك بسائر أعماله فحمل ذلك على قلة المروءة وفرط الشرة ويقدح ذلك في الشهادة وما يليق ذلك بجميع أحواله وأفعاله في ترك التكلف كان ذلك منه تواضعا. So if you see a person who is eating in public, but him eating in public goes along with the rest of his actions, generally he's like that. he's down to earth, he's with the people, he's amongst the people, then you say that this is from his humility and his good character. But let's say you see a person who's normally in some sort of ivory tower, and this person never interacts with the people, and you see this person suddenly in the marketplace eating, you say this is it's a form of posturing, it's a form of showing off. It's not something that he should be engaging in, because it's not from his normal actions, etc. And then he says, الثاني يستحب أن يحمل طعام إلى أهل الميت ولما جاء نعي جعفر بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه قال آل جعفر شغلوا بميتهم عن صنع طعامهم فاحملوا إليهم ما يأكلون. He says the second random kind of issue that he's discussing in relation to food, he says it's recommended that you take food to the family of a person who has passed away. Why? When Ja'far ibn Abi Talib passed away, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the family of Ja'far are busy with their person who has passed away. They're busy with their dead person, and they have not got the time to make food. So take food to them, take food to their house. And so even if you can't visit, take food to them. It makes a difference. He says, الثالث لا ينبغي أن يحضر طعام ظالم he says فإن أكره فليقلل الأكل ولا يقصد الطعام الأطيب. He says a person should not, and you can take this and you can apply it to generally a person whose food is haram for you to consume, meaning their wealth is haram. He says a person should not attend the gathering or eat from the food of an oppressor. And if he is forced to do so, he has no choice, then he should eat as little as possible, and he should not eat from the best of foods. He should eat from the lowest form of foods that are on offer, and he should eat as the smallest amount possible. So likewise, let's say for example, a person has been invited to eat with a person who, this individual's money, this individual's wealth is haram, and you can't get out of it. What do? You eat a small amount, and you eat from the least that is on offer. If you have no other choice. If you can, avoid it completely. And this is fiqh. Fiqh is not ma'rifatul halal min al-haram, it's ma'rifatul harami min al-haram. This is what real fiqh is. To know the haram from the haram. To know which of the two harams are lesser. This is what understanding of fiqh is. To know the halal from the haram is easy, but to know the haram from the haram is real fiqh, real understanding. And then we come to al-kitab al-thani, adab al-nikah, the etiquettes of marriage and getting married and so on and so forth. And we'll start that next week, inshallah.